Beyond the surface web, in the unindexed shadows where anonymity breeds monstrosity, real horrors lurk. Welcome, intrepid explorers of the digital abyss, to Nightmare True Horror. Tonight, we delve into 4 true accounts from the darkest corners of the deep web, where curiosity can be a fatal click. What chilling rabbit holes have you stumbled down? What unseen eyes have you felt through your own screen? The comments below are a secure channel for your own unnerving encounters. If the chilling reality of these digital nightmares resonates with your darkest fascinations, consider this your encrypted invitation to subscribe. For the data we've exhumed tonight is particularly disturbing, and the final, most terrifying breach is one you'll need to witness to truly understand the threat. The coffee in my cup had gone cold an hour ago, but I couldn't stop staring at this diner's front door. Every time the bell chimed, my heart hammered against my ribs. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the cracked vinyl booths. That's when I heard it, the soft scrape of footsteps on gravel outside, deliberate and measured, like someone circling the building. I glanced around the nearly empty diner. The elderly waitress was refilling sugar dispensers. The trucker in the corner booth was absorbed in his phone. None of them seemed to notice the figure now standing motionless outside the window, watching me. 3 months earlier, I'd stumbled onto a forum called Cold Case Collective while researching unsolved murders for my true crime podcast. The deep website required special browsers and invitation codes, but once inside, I found hundreds of users obsessively dissecting cases that had gone cold decades ago. Crime scene photos, police reports, autopsy details, information that shouldn't have been public. The discussions were eerily detailed, almost like some users had inside knowledge. I spent weeks lurking, reading about the Riverside Strangler, a serial killer who terrorized Southern California in the late 90s before vanishing completely. 7 victims, all young women, all found near the same stretch of highway. The case had haunted me since college when one of the victims, Sarah Chen, had been my dorm mate's older sister. That's when Truth Seeker 981 sent me a private message. I know you've been reading about Riverside. I have information about who really did it. Real information. Meet me if you want the truth. I should have deleted it immediately. Instead, I found myself typing back, asking for proof. He sent a photo, a driver's license that had never been released to the public. Sarah Chen's license, the one that had been missing from her purse when they found her body. The figure outside moved closer to the window. In the harsh neon light from the diner's sign, I could make out his features clearly now. Mid-40s, graying beard, wire-rimmed glasses. Exactly as he described himself in our messages. But something was wrong. His eyes were too focused, too calculating. He wasn't looking at the diner generally. He was looking directly at me. When he finally pushed through the door, the bell's chimes seemed to echo forever. He scanned the room methodically before his gaze settled on me. I raised my hand slightly, and he nodded, sliding into the booth across from me with fluid, practiced movements. "You're smaller than I expected," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. "I'm David." I introduced myself, trying to match his composure, but my voice cracked slightly. Up close, something about his appearance nagged at me. The way he sat perfectly still, hands folded, the way his eyes never quite met mine, but seemed to catalog every detail of my face. "You said you had information about the Riverside case," I managed. David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "More than information. I know exactly who killed those girls. I know because I've been watching him for years, studying his patterns." He pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. Inside were crime scene photos I'd never seen before. Different angles, closer details. Photos that looked like they'd been taken by someone who'd been there. "Where did you get these?" My hands trembled as I held them. The killer kept trophies, more than just the licenses. He photographed everything. David's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. He was very thorough, very organized. A chill ran down my spine. Something in his tone, the way he described the killer's methods with such intimate knowledge. I looked up at his face again, really studied it this time. The bone structure, the set of his jaw. Then it hit me like a physical blow. Then It hit me like a physical blow. I'd seen this face before. In the forum. Not as a user photo, but in a composite sketch buried deep in one of the case files. A witness description from 1998. A man seen talking to victim number 4 outside a gas station the night she disappeared. My blood turned to ice. The envelope slipped from my numb fingers, photos scattering across the table. David's smile widened as he watched my face change. "You recognize me," he said softly. "I was wondering when you would. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate." David reached across the table and gently pressed my wrist down. "Don't make a scene," he whispered. "The waitress has a grandson your age. It would be unfortunate if she got involved." His grip was iron-strong despite his casual appearance. I glanced toward the counter, but the elderly woman was in the back, out of sight. The trucker had left. We were essentially alone. "You've been very helpful," David continued, still holding my wrist. "Your questions on the forum, your research methods, you're quite thorough. I've enjoyed watching you work." The realization hit me. He'd been monitoring my activity for months. Every post I'd read, every case I'd researched. He'd been studying me just like I'd been studying the cases. "The photos, the information you shared with me, it's all real, isn't it?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Every detail. I told you I knew the killer intimately." His eyes were completely cold now. I never lied about that. I forced myself to think clearly despite the terror flooding my system. The diner was isolated, at least 10 miles from the nearest town. My phone was in my car. I needed to create distance, get to a public place with witnesses. "I need to use the restroom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. David's grip tightened slightly. "I don't think so. We're just getting to the interesting part of our conversation." But then the bell chimed again. A state trooper walked in, probably stopping for coffee during his patrol. David's hand loosened reflexively, and I saw my chance. I yanked my arm free and bolted toward the trooper, words tumbling out about the man at my table, the photos, the forum. The officer looked confused but alert, hand moving instinctively toward his radio. When we turned back to the booth, David was gone. The photos were gone. Only my cold coffee cup remained, along with a napkin with 5 words written in careful print. "This isn't over between us." The state police took my statement, but without the photos or any concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They increased patrols in the area and advised me to stay vigilant. The forum disappeared from the deep web 2 days later, like it had never existed. I moved across the country, changed my name, abandoned the podcast. For months, I convinced myself I was safe, but sometimes, late at night, I'll get a notification that someone new has followed my social media accounts. The profile is always blank, always created just minutes before. And sometimes, when I'm walking alone, I'll hear footsteps that match my pace exactly, stopping when I stop, starting when I start. I never did find out what happened to the other foreign users who'd been asking questions about the Riverside Strangler. I try not to think about whether they all received private messages too, or whether some of them accepted meeting invitations that didn't end with a lucky interruption from a passing state trooper. Because David was right about one thing. This isn't over between us. And I have this sinking feeling that next time, I won't be the one asking the questions. The echoes of that chilling account still linger, don't they? But the deep web holds far more unseen horrors. And our next story is another unsettling descent. The notification chime from my phone cut through the quiet of my Denver apartment as I uploaded another photo to Instagram. This one showing my new workspace setup with the caption, "Living my best freelance life." The late afternoon sun streamed through my floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors of the loft I just moved into after landing my dream job as a remote content strategist. Everything felt perfect, like the fresh start I'd been craving after years of corporate drudgery. That's when I heard it. A soft electronic beep from my laptop, different from any notification sound I recognized. When I glanced at the screen, a small pop-up appeared for just a second before disappearing. Too quick for me to read, but long enough to register that it wasn't from any app I had opened. My cursor moved slightly on its own, as if someone else was controlling it remotely. I stared at the screen, waiting for it to happen again, but everything seemed normal. Just a glitch, I told myself. There's something about that brief pop-up, and the cursor movement made my skin crawl. As I returned to editing my Instagram post, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me through the camera lens of my laptop, studying my new apartment, my daily routines, my carefully curated online presence. My name is Maya Chen, and I'm a 28-year-old digital marketing specialist who'd moved to Denver in September 2023 to start fresh after a bad breakup in San Francisco. I've been documenting my new life extensively on social media. Instagram posts about apartment hunting, LinkedIn updates about my career transition, TikTok videos about single life in a new city. Building an online brand was part of my job, and sharing my journey felt natural, empowering even. My follower count had grown steadily over the past few months as I shared everything from morning coffee routines to weekend hiking adventures in the Rockies. The engagement was mostly positive: likes, supportive comments, and the usual mix of brands trying to sponsor my content. I've been careful about privacy settings and never shared specific location details, but I wanted to build an authentic connection with my audience. The first message from Watching Joe 2023 came 3 days after I'd posted about my new apartment. It seemed harmless enough. Love your content. You're such an inspiration for people starting over. Can't wait to see what you do next. I responded with a standard thank you message and thought nothing of it. But over the next week, the messages became more frequent and increasingly specific. Comments about the coffee shop I'd visited that morning. Questions about the book I was reading that was visible in the background of a video. Observations about my daily schedule that seemed too detailed for a casual follower. How did you know I go to Stellar Coffee on weekdays? I messaged back after they mentioned my usual Tuesday morning routine. I pay attention to details. True fans notice everything, was their reply. I started checking their profile more carefully. Watching Joe 2023 had no posts, no profile picture, and a follower count that seemed artificially low for someone who claimed to be a longtime social media user. Their account had been created just days after I'd moved to Denver, and their only activity was commenting on my content and messaging me. The messages escalated quickly. They began mentioning things that weren't visible in my public posts: the color of my bedroom walls, the brand of laptop I used, even the fact that I'd ordered Thai food for dinner on a night when I hadn't posted anything about food. Your apartment has such great natural light. That west-facing window in your bedroom must be perfect for afternoon reading. I'd never shown my bedroom or mentioned which direction my windows faced. Someone was either accessing private information about my apartment or watching me in ways that went far beyond social media. I changed all my passwords and enabled two-factor authentication on every account, but the messages continued. Watching Joe 23 somehow knew when I'd changed my morning routine, when I'd rearranged furniture, when I'd had video calls for work. They were monitoring me in real time through methods I couldn't identify. Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime? I feel like I know you so well already. Stellar Coffee at 9 a.m. tomorrow? The suggestion of an in-person meeting sent ice through my veins. This person knew my exact schedule, my location, my daily habits. They'd been conducting systematic surveillance, and now they wanted direct contact. I blocked the account immediately, but within hours, a new profile appeared. At your biggest fan 23, same writing style, same intimate knowledge of my life, same escalating demands for attention and contact. Blocking me was rude, Maya. I thought we had a connection. I've been so supportive of your journey. That night, I decided to investigate further. Using techniques I'd learned during my marketing career, I began tracing the digital footprints of my stalker. What I discovered made my blood run cold. The accounts messaging me were connected to a network of profiles across multiple platforms, all created within days of each other, all focused on different women who shared lifestyle content online. But more disturbing was what I found when I dug deeper into the digital breadcrumbs. My stalker's profiles linked back to a forum on the dark web called Personal Watch, where users shared detailed dossiers on individual women, complete with photos, schedules, personal information, and what they called vulnerability assessments. My name was there, along with dozens of others, in a database that treated real women like collectible objects. The forum wasn't just for voyeuristic entertainment. It was a marketplace. Users could claim targets, share surveillance techniques, and even coordinate real-world harassment campaigns. Some threads discussed break-ins, theft, and worse. I was listed as a level 3 target, someone with enough online presence to gather substantial personal information, but not famous enough to attract law enforcement attention. My stalker had been documenting my routines, my vulnerabilities, my isolation in a new city, building a profile to sell to others or use for his own purposes. The worst part was discovering how much information was available. Someone had compiled my work schedule, my exercise routine, photos of my apartment building, even the license plate number of my car. They'd been following me physically while maintaining their digital surveillance. "I know you've been researching me," came a message from yet another new account. "Smart girl. But you should know that what you found is just the beginning. We have resources you can't imagine." Attached to the message was a screenshot of my apartment taken from across the street, timestamped from that morning. Someone had been watching my building, photographing me through my windows, documenting my life in real time. I called the police immediately, but their response was frustratingly limited. "Annoying messages and public photography aren't illegal," the officer explained, "unless they make specific threats or attempt physical contact. There's not much we can do." But I knew this was more than annoying messages. This was a coordinated stalking operation with potentially dozens of participants using sophisticated digital tools to track and monitor targets across multiple platforms. I hired a private cybersecurity firm to investigate further, and what they uncovered was terrifying. My devices had been compromised through malware delivered via fake social media ads targeted specifically at me. My laptop's camera and microphone had been remotely activated. My location data was being harvested in real time, and my personal information was being sold to multiple buyers. The Personal Watch forum was just one node in a larger network that commodified women's privacy and safety, turning online harassment into a profitable business model. Maya's getting professional help appeared in a forum thread I wasn't supposed to have access to. Might be time to escalate before she makes this difficult for everyone. The cybersecurity team helped me clean my devices and establish secure communication channels. But they warned me that the network tracking me was sophisticated and persistent. "These people don't give up easily," my contact explained. "You're not just dealing with one stalker. You're dealing with an organization." I moved out of my apartment within a week, staying with friends while I found a new place with better security. I deleted most of my social media accounts and started using an assumed name for work. But the psychological damage was profound. The knowledge that strangers had been watching me sleep, work, and live my daily life left me permanently hypervigilant. 6 months later, I received a package at my new address with no return label. Inside was a printed photo of me walking out of my building that morning, with a note: "New apartment, same beautiful smile. We're patient, Maya. We can wait, because some forms of stalking never really end. They just adapt to new technology, recruit new participants, and find new ways to monetize fear. The internet has created unprecedented opportunities for predators to monitor, track, and terrorize their targets, often with complete anonymity and minimal legal consequences. And somewhere, in the depths of the dark web, new forums are being created, new targets are being selected, and new methods are being developed to turn social media sharing into a weapon against the people brave enough to live their lives in public. The next time you post about your morning routine or share a photo from your favorite coffee shop, remember that someone might be taking notes, building profiles, and planning to turn your openness into their opportunity. Because in the digital age, the most dangerous stalkers aren't the ones lurking in dark alleys. They're the ones hiding behind screen names, collecting data, and turning your own content into a roadmap for finding you. And they're always watching, always waiting, always just one click away from turning your digital life into your real-world nightmare. If that tale from the dark corners of the internet sent a chill down your spine, prepare yourself. The next true deep web encounter might just make you question everything. Only share week. I'd sourced. The soft hum of my laptop's cooling fan was the only sound in my downtown Seattle apartment as I scrolled through encrypted forums at 2:47 a.m. The city's skyline casting geometric shadows across my cluttered desk. As a cybersecurity consultant specializing in dark web threats, these late-night research sessions were part of my job, documenting emerging criminal networks for federal agencies and private clients. The work paid well, but it meant spending hours in humanity's digital sewers, cataloging the worst impulses people shared when they believed they were invisible. That's when my secure messaging app chimed with a notification I hadn't expected. The sound cut through the familiar white noise of my air conditioning, sharp and insistent. I glanced at the screen. A message from an encrypted account I didn't recognize, sent to a research alias I used only for deep web investigations. The message was simple. I see you watching us, researcher. Curious about what we really do. My stomach tightened as I stared at the text. I'd been careful to maintain complete anonymity in my digital investigations, using multiple layers of encryption and proxy servers. How had someone connected my observation activities to this specific account? And more unsettling, what did they mean by what we really do? My name is David Chen, and I've been investigating cybercrime for 8 years. First with the FBI's Cyber Division, now as an independent consultant. This particular case involved tracking human trafficking networks that used encrypted chat rooms for coordination. The forum I'd been monitoring, called The Collectors, appeared to be where predators shared techniques and coordinated activities across multiple states. Initially, the conversation seemed like the usual dark web posturing. Anonymous users sharing violent fantasies, trying to shock each other with increasingly disturbing scenarios. But over weeks of observation, I'd noticed patterns that suggested something more sinister. Certain users discussed logistics with professional precision, acquisition methods, transportation routes, disposal techniques. They shared photos of equipment, restraints, sedatives, soundproofing materials, with the casual expertise of people who'd used these tools before. The user who'd contacted me called himself the Architect. His messages in the public forum stood out for their methodical approach to discussing abduction and control. He treated violence like a science, sharing detailed psychological profiles of victim types, discussing the most effective methods for breaking someone's will, analyzing the weaknesses in law enforcement investigation techniques. His private message to me was more direct. Your questions in the forum show real understanding of our methodology. Most observers are just thrill seekers, but you ask the right questions about logistics, about psychology, about avoiding detection. I think we could work together. I should have reported the contact immediately, but professional curiosity kept me engaged. I told myself I was gathering intelligence, that maintaining the connection could expose a larger network. But the Architect began sharing information that made my blood run cold. I've been operating for 12 years, he wrote. Started with runaways, easy targets, minimal investigation when they disappear. But I've evolved. Now I focus on professionals, people with routines, people whose disappearance will look like voluntary relocation. I have associates in 6 states. We share resources, techniques, even subjects when someone becomes problematic. He sent photographs that looked like crime scene documentation. A soundproofed basement, restraint equipment arranged with surgical precision, and most disturbing Polaroid images of young women in various states of distress. The photos had a clinical quality that suggested they were documentation rather than trophies. These represent our current inventory, the Architect explained. Each subject teaches us something new about control and psychological manipulation. We're always learning, always improving our methods. The realization hit like ice water. This wasn't role-playing or fantasy sharing. The Architect was documenting real crimes, and he was recruiting me as either an accomplice or a victim. I tried to extract myself from the conversations, but the Architect had already begun studying me with the same methodical approach he applied to his victims. He sent photos of my apartment building taken from multiple angles, shots of my car in the parking garage, even images captured through my office window during client meetings. You can't just walk away from this level of exposure, he messaged. You've seen operational details, victim documentation, network structure. That makes you either an asset or a liability. I prefer assets. but I can work with either designation. The surveillance escalated rapidly. He sent real-time updates about my activities. You met with federal agents today. Building 26, third floor conference room. That complicates our relationship, but doesn't end it. I have contacts in law enforcement too. I contacted my former FBI colleagues immediately, but the architect's network was sophisticated. They used military-grade encryption, routed communications through multiple countries, and had established protocols for avoiding detection. The agents needed more evidence to act, essentially asking me to continue the dangerous game while they built a case. The psychological warfare intensified. I'd find my apartment door unlocked after returning from meetings with federal agents. Nothing was stolen, but personal items were moved. Books rearranged, photos repositioned, clear evidence that he'd been inside. My laptop would display new messages when I woke up. Sleep well? I enjoyed watching you dream. The breaking point came when I discovered a small camera hidden in my bedroom smoke detector. The device was professionally installed, nearly invisible, with wireless transmission capabilities. The architect had been watching me for weeks, learning my routines, studying my vulnerabilities. That night, a final message appeared on my laptop. Tomorrow we meet in person. You'll understand then why resistance is futile. My network spans more than you realize, and some of my associates are very close to you. I spent the night in an FBI safe house, while agents monitored my apartment. At 3 a.m., they arrested Marcus Webb, as he attempted to break in with restraints, sedatives, and detailed plans for my abduction. But Webb was just one node in a larger network. The investigation revealed a sophisticated human trafficking operation spanning 7 states. The architect's real name was Dr. Marcus Webb, a former military psychologist who'd been dishonorably discharged for conducting unauthorized experiments on prisoners. He'd spent years building a network of like-minded individuals, using encrypted forums to recruit accomplices and identify victims. Webb's operation had claimed at least 23 victims over 8 years. He'd been selling people to wealthy clients who paid premium prices for custom experiences, essentially purchasing human beings for torture and murder. The network included corrupt law enforcement officers, medical professionals who provided drugs and false death certificates, and transportation specialists who moved victims across state lines. Webb was convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to life without parole. But the investigation revealed that his network was larger than initially suspected. Several associates were never identified, and multiple victims were never recovered. I left the cybersecurity field after the trial, unable to continue work that required immersion in humanity's darkest impulses. The experience taught me that the internet has created new hunting grounds for predators who use digital anonymity to coordinate activities that would have been impossible in previous generations. The most terrifying aspect wasn't Webb's individual pathology. It was discovering how easily predators can find each other online, how they use technology to turn isolated impulses into coordinated operations, and how they exploit our trust in it, digital privacy, to identify and study potential victims. And sometimes late at night when I'm browsing the internet for legitimate purposes, I'll receive a message from an unknown account. Just a simple hello, researcher, we're still watching. And I'll remember that Webb's network was never fully dismantled, because the internet never forgets, and neither do the monsters who've learned to call it home. It's unsettling to think these events truly unfolded in the hidden layers of the web. And believe me, there are more horrifying truths lurking in the deep web's shadows, waiting to be revealed. My insomnia has a routine. When the city of Portland finally sighs into silence, my mind sparks to life. I spend the graveyard shift in the blue glow of my monitors, a digital ghost drifting through the internet's darkest, most forgotten corners. My particular poison is the deep web, specifically the forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries, the places where society's forgotten stories fester. It was on one of these nights, scrolling through a forum called the Nameless Archive, that I found her. The thread was titled Jane Doe #47, Portland. The post was a clinical, detached summary of a woman who had vanished a year ago. No leads, no suspects, a case gone cold. It was the kind of tragic, anonymous story the archive specialized in. Then, I saw the photograph. It was grainy, likely a screen grab from a low-quality security camera. It showed a young woman with dark hair, laughing, caught in a moment of unguarded joy. But it was the background that made my blood run cold. Behind her, vibrant and unmistakable, was the sprawling whirl of a phoenix that covered the entire side of a brick building. I knew it instantly. It was the mural at the end of my street, not 300 feet from where I was sitting. A sudden sharp chill prickled my skin. It felt like a draft, but my windows were closed. I heard a faint, scraping sound from outside, on the small fire escape that clung to the side of my apartment building. I told myself it was a raccoon, or just the wind rattling a loose pipe. I peered out my window into the dark alley, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling lingered. A heavy, unshakable sense of being watched. The story was no longer an abstract puzzle on a screen. It had a location. It was my location. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I couldn't shake the image of that woman, her ghost now tied to my own neighborhood. I dove deeper into the nameless archive, ignoring the paranoid voice in my head that told me to let it go. The forum members discussed Jane Doe Hash 47 with a chilling, academic fervor. They weren't trying to solve the case. They were admiring it, like connoisseurs of a dark art. I found links in the thread to other missing person cases in Portland, all from the last 3 years. A college student, a young barista, a dental hygienist. On the surface, they were unrelated, each a separate, tragic data point. The police had treated them as such, but seen through the lens of the archive, a pattern began to emerge. All were women in their 20s. All lived alone. All had disappeared without a trace. And with each case, there was a photograph. The college student, smiling on a park bench. The barista, walking her dog. Each picture was candid, personal, and the background of each photo was a location I knew. A small fountain in the park where I sometimes ate lunch. The front of the independent movie theater I frequented. The disappearances weren't just in my city. They were in my world. They formed a tight, terrifying constellation with my apartment at its very center. The paranoia started to bleed into my waking life. I'd find my welcome mat slightly crooked, as if it had been lifted and replaced. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway outside my door late at night, only to find the corridor empty. I began to feel like a specimen under a microscope, my life being quietly observed and cataloged. I taped over my laptop's webcam. I started walking home from the grocery store via a different route every time. The digital ghost I was online had become a real-world ghost in my own life, haunted by a mystery I was terrified to solve. The escalation came without warning. I was logged into the archive, scrolling through the old threads, when I saw a new post in a section titled Current Projects. It was by a user named Observer. Subject #5 is proving to be a creature of habit, the post read. Prefers to work late. Responds well to isolation. Diet consists primarily of takeout, usually Thai food on Tuesdays. Spends an inordinate amount of time online. The preliminary observation phase is nearing completion. My fork, loaded with pad thai from the place down the street, clattered onto my plate. Every detail was a mirror. I was subject #5. I was no longer investigating a cold case. I was living in the middle of a live one. My role had changed from observer to subject. The line between my screen and my life had been completely erased. The next night, my power went out. Not the whole building, just my apartment. I sat in the sudden, suffocating darkness, my heart hammering against my ribs. A moment later, my phone, which I thankfully kept charged, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It contained a single, grainy image. It was a photo of me, sitting at my desk, my face illuminated by the glow of my monitors. It had been taken from outside, through my window, from a high angle. Below the image was a single line of text. The finale is always the best part. My eyes darted to the window. Across the street, the old abandoned St. Michael's Church stood silent and dark, except for one window, high up in the clock tower. A perfect hidden vantage point. The sound I dismissed as the wind days ago. A metallic scrape coming from the fire escape right outside my kitchen window, followed by the soft, unmistakable sound of the window lock being carefully, expertly jimmied. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was coming in. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. I didn't scream. There was no time. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a cast iron skillet from the stove, and flattened myself into the dark corner between the refrigerator and the wall. I held my breath, listening to the slow, deliberate slide of the window opening. A dark figure, a silhouette against the faint city glow, climbed silently into my apartment. I didn't wait to see a face. I didn't wait for him to find me. The moment he stepped fully into the room, I swung the skillet with all the force my terror could muster. The police found him unconscious on my kitchen floor. In his pocket was a key to the old church. They raided the clock tower and found what they called a murder nest. High-powered cameras, listening devices, detailed files on 4 other women, and a new file with my name on it. They found his trophies, a driver's license, a single earring, a college ID, small pieces of the lives he had cataloged and then erased. The man was a local software engineer, quiet, kept to himself. He was one part of a larger group, a club that found, tracked, and collected people. The nameless archive was their scrapbook. I'm in witness protection now, in a city I don't know, with a name that doesn't feel like my own. I haven't been online in 6 months. I've tried to disappear, to become my own Jane Doe. But this morning, a plain brown envelope was slipped under my new unlisted apartment door. There was no stamp, no return address. Inside was a single glossy photograph. It was of me, walking into this very building, taken from a high angle from the building across the street. Taped to the back was a small, neatly printed label. Subject #5, relocated. Observation. Phase. Recommencing.